Good afternoon, guys. My name is Dave Doc Watson. I'm a retired music teacher and a professional woodwind player, basically playing saxophone and flute. I do a little bass clarinet recordings and I do play clarinet a bit, but my main instruments are the 4 saxophones and 2 flutes, the flute and the alto flute, which if I get a chance, I'll show you the alto flute later. I'm thinking about breaking this seminar into 2 parts. One, talking about and showing you my 20-minute daily regimen, which is very important for flute players. Now, sax guys, sometimes they can get away without playing one day or so, and it doesn't affect this and it doesn't affect their sound. But flutes and brass people can't do it. It's just the nature of our armature and the nature of the instrument. You really need to play it every day if you want it to sound good. So what I tried to do is put together a few little things that you can do every day for 15 or 20 minutes. And after we go through that, we'll see how we're doing with time. I'm going to show you some of the materials that I use. And Mr. Dillon, I sent him a sheet of all of the stuff. I even went out and purchased some books, especially for this that I really enjoyed, and I think they'll be real helpful. But let's get started. Like I mentioned, we're doing harmonics, which basically we're moving that laser of airflow in and out. Now, I'm only going to do 3 upper partials or 2 upper partials. There's about 6 of them. And the better you get here and more you can control this, you'll be able to get to that. But let's start easy because it's important to be able to practice stuff that you can play that challenges you, but is not so far out of your reach that you get discouraged and you don't do it. So I want to give you a warm-up that you will be able to do. So I usually start on low C, C sharp. Take a nice deep breath. Guys, don't forget, pushing that air down from the diaphragm. Don't talk about my belly. But yes, that's a pandemic belly. That's what it is. But guys, seriously, push that air down there, okay? And here we go. Now, I did them at a certain tempo. You can do them just a little slower. It would help. And the main thing is I'm doing all up and down on one breath, and I'm not tonguing. I'm not going. That's not happening. Just one solid breath. And it takes a while to develop that. And you can add those upper partials, and it gets very interesting. And I mentioned I started on what? Low C sharp. You're not listening. Get that pen out. Okay, so low C sharp. And I go to F sharp. And I go back down. And how far down do I go? Low C, C sharp. Yeah, you got it. So that's how I start. That's my first warm-up. And the next thing I do is I go to a book called, let me pull it out for you. It's called Studies for Facilitating the Execution of the Upper Notes of the Flute by Daniel Wood. Now, this is my old book that I have that I just mentioned, right? When it came time for me to originally do this video, when Mr. Dillon asked me, this book I wasn't able to get my hands on. So I bought another one just for you guys. Now, as you can see, number one, they're different color. And I didn't give you this publisher. I gave you this publisher because this is the new and improved version. Okay? So let's take a little look at the new and improved version. It basically has exercises like this. And basically what you're doing is you're doing 5 notes of the scale. Now, in some other books that I got, I was looking at, and in the beginning book of Flute 101, Mastering the Basics, they said something about playing something 5 times to make sure you get it right. And I guess that's the teacher's thing, because I always told my students, play it 5 times. If you can't play it right 5 times, then slow the tempo down and keep working on it. So, facilitating the upper register, you need to use a metronome. I hope you can hear that. And and you want a nice even sound. You don't want it to get loud on the upper notes and soft on the lower notes. Try to keep everything nice and even. And I'm going to do just a couple of them, major and minor. Ready? And I hope that was 5 times. That's what you got to do. Then go to minor. Ready? And now, I don't know if you noticed, when I went to minor, on F minor, my B flat kind of popped out a little bit. It wasn't as even as the rest of the notes. And because in F minor, I'm using that A flat and I'm getting this pinky involved, you still have to think about playing stuff even. So I start with that. I start on F, and I go all the way up to, I think, F in the high register. Yeah, because that takes you to your high C. Now, folks, I got to tell you, what I do is as I get into that last octave, I slow my tempo down. Why? Because all of the fingering is different. You have to really angle that airflow so your notes don't break or crack. And if you try to do that at the same tempo you were doing the lower ones, you might have a bit of a problem. So that's the second thing I do. And I'm trying to think that brings you to around 10 minutes, 8 minutes. Next thing I do is the chromatic scale. And as you could see, that wasn't very even. So I do same thing. Ran out of air because I didn't push that air all the way down. But your chromatic scales, as you learn them, I mean, at a slow tempo, you will be able to speed them up, and I hope you can play them cleaner than that when you get them fast. So that's the next thing I do. So where do we start? Johnny? We started at harmonics, and we went from low C sharp to high F sharp. Then we went to the book by Daniel Woods, Facilitating the Upper Register, and we started on F. At least I started on F. You should start lower. And we go all the way up and all the way down. After that, we do the chromatic scale. And after that, I work on some major scales. And no minors, just majors. And if you noticed, when I got to F, I went up 2 extra notes. So let's try that again. and I didn't tongue any of it. Now, with your major scales, you can get into all kinds of different articulation things, which I'll talk to you about that the other books talk about. You can make up a bunch of different articulations, but we'll get to that. So, if you do your 12 major scales, your Daniel Woods, the 5-note thing, right? That's kind of a part of a scale. If you do those two, and your harmonics, and your chromatic scales, that's going to take you to about 20 minutes. Now, those of you that are serious about doing this, there's a few other things you need to remember. You need to write stuff down when you practice. Folks they go in, they play, and then the next day they forget what they practiced, or they wind up doing the same thing over and over. So you can get a composition book like this, and I mean, there are some really nice ones out like this, a practice planner. Let's see if I can find a blank page towards the back. And these are really nice. They give you room to write what you worked on, and then you can also kind of take a look at, you can, after your practice, you can write little notes as well, which is good. Now, I know you're saying, write notes. Wait a minute. Yo, we don't write no notes. We don't write notes on nothing. We use our phone. We record stuff. So I want to get to that. Recording is also a good technique, guys, is to put your phone on record and record 5 or 10 minutes of your rehearsal and listen back to it and see how you sound, see what you're doing wrong and what you're doing right. I used to record my jazz band all the time, and we would sit and listen and see what parts we needed to work on. So recording is also a good way to go. But it's more helpful, I think, to go old school. Write some stuff down so that you can work on it daily, all right? Now, for those of you that encounter certain reading problems in some of your classical or jazz music, this is the book that taught me how to read. Justin DeChocho in college. He was one of my jazz band directors, and he was a drummer. And he gave me this book. And guys, I could talk about this book for 15 minutes. But basically what it does is it gives you a pattern. And the first pattern is basically quarter notes, rest, and rest. He gives you 15 different patterns of moving the rest and the quarter notes along. And then for exercise 16 at the bottom, he incorporates all of the stuff that he did in the 15 exercises above. If you can't play exercise 16 perfectly, then that means you're not ready to go on. And that's one of the things I find with a lot of you guys. You want to rush through stuff. You don't really do it perfectly, and then you move on to the next thing. It's going to cost you in the long run. And take it from a guy that did a lot of that. You know, I had to go back and relearn stuff. Okay, so next, the books that I purchased for you guys, which I really kind of dig. Oh, I'm just going to show you this page. Okay, sample practice plan, and it shows you some of the stuff to practice. And it's always good to ask your teachers, especially if you have a private teacher, and even your band directors, you know, show them the material you have and say, hey, you know, how should I put this together practice-wise? But let me go to the front pages of these books. The flute scale book, the flute 101, that was 102, excuse me. And this one's 101. This is more for your beginning flute players, your 7th and 8th graders, or if you're a doubling flute person, you're a saxophone player, and you're just learning flute, I do recommend this. Now, all of this stuff that I went over and some is in these books. Which one is this? This is the scale book, which I think has a little bit of, it incorporated a little bit of everything from 101 and 102. It talks about one hand harmonics, and it also talks about harmonics without using without using your flute, just your head joint, just to be able to get some sounds off that. That's pretty cool. But it has a whole page, a few pages of the whole harmonic scene. And you know the scales that I was going over? It's got them all. It's got them in thirds. Or, you know, it's got them in triplet figures. They talk about upper and lower neighbors. And I really like that. And they go through the arpeggios of all the kind of major, minor, diminished. So here's a diminished arpeggio. Uh-oh, let me get this right, guys. Oh, that wasn't a C. That was a C sharp. Ah! Now, when you get out of your major arpeggios and you start getting into your diminished, you'll see how difficult they are. Now, arpeggios like that are used to help you be able to get through that particular sound, and you'll need licks. So that was basically diminished arpeggio and a diminished lick. I'll get into more of that on the next video when we talk about some of the fun stuff and some of the jazz and R&B things. I hope this video has been helpful. I know I have a tendency to ramble on, but I hope you learned some stuff from it. Just get into trying to practice every day, guys, even if it's just 15 minutes, but 20 minutes just to kind of get things working. You'll be surprised how much better you'll play. And when it comes recital time, you'll kill it. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for part 2.